Welcome to Simon White, the podcast at the crossroads of media, business, and politics. I'm Christian White, and joined as always by Mark Simon. Mark, please say hello.
Hi, how are you?
Mark, doing well. It's been a while, a lot going.
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah. And especially in China, or China, as former President Trump calls it. Xi Jinping skipped UN General Assembly and skipped the G20 and shaved off part of the BRICS, which are his kind of socialists, a lot of them, not all of them. And you have a economic catastrophe maybe in China. I don't know. What do you think? Evergrande is missing more bond payments. Seems to be a slow moving train wreck, if that's a thing. What's your sort of, maybe break it down into business and then later politics, but what's your thought on the economy over there?
I can lead in with one thing, and I was been thinking about this for a while, and that's this. Even if China started to grow demographically again by like 1% or 2%, they still have more flats by a couple of million, by most estimates, between like 1.5 and 2.5 million. So let's say 2 million. They still have 2 million too many flats. So in other words, they got too much property. They have too many flats. And the point I'm making is we're probably seeing right now, God knows how many Chinese are leaving now that we have, 2,000 a week coming over the southern border and flying in and every other place. But they're probably going to be down another 1.5 million, people this year. And it's starting to drop. And then next year it's going to be 4 million. The next year after that it's going to be 6 million. The point being is, they're basically dying, and I don't know how they get out of it. Japan was able to make their recovery because they are a free market system, and they essentially found a way for the politicians to lose sometimes and them to make the corrections. The problem in the CCP, with the CCP in China, you can't lose. There's no such thing as losing, so you can't make the corrections. The nice thing about the democratic system is that basically people can lose. Mistakes are fixed, you move on. In the CCP, mistakes are fatal, and that's the problem. And Xi Jinping is in, I hate to overuse the term, it's China's doom cycle. In other words, it's just going down and down and down. Now, they don't have violence in the streets. It's not Philadelphia looting, but basically they are losing money. And if you have property, if you have anything in China, it's getting harder and harder to acquire wealth. And so, yes, wages are rising, but also everything else, prices are rising with it. It's not like there's real wage gains happening of any significance. Of course, people are probably doing a little bit better, I think, than they were wage-wise, but then the inflation catches up with them and their net worth and their wealth drops down. Remember, what's the old saying? You'll own nothing and like it. Well, the Chinese are coming to that. The Chinese are coming to that, and they're not liking it.
Sorry, the World Economic Forum guy.
World Economic Forum. Same thing. Same commies. Same.
Yeah, and what is driving that? So you had decades of a one China policy, which, because your eldest son is also your retirement plan, you're the mother.
Yes.
When your husband dies, you go and live with son number one, or even doesn't die, maybe both parents, if they can't work, live off of son number one. So if you can only have one kid, that led to abortion on a massive scale of girls. I don't know. And now they've eased up on that, but it's the same thing we see elsewhere, where economic uncertainty and doubt about the future in general, and just sort of a modernizing trend has led to this demographic crunch. And once it starts, it really gains steams. Because if you do look at Japan, and I think South Korea is in equally bad shape, we're not doing as well as we once were. We were at least at 2.1, which is what you need to maintain population for a while, but we've dipped. But anyway, is it the economic problem that's really driving this?
What's the old saying? The worst people there are dumb people who work hard, because and that's the problem. The problem is you have bad economic policy. Whoever thought the communists came up with a good economic policy?
Right.
Basically, we liked it because it was cheap stuff. Oh yeah, the Chinese are doing great. They're improving. Yeah, it was cheap stuff. Look at their highways and their roads. Of course they had highways and roads. We were buying everything from them. Everything from, this cup to your shirt to these products. Yeah, they made it, and God bless them for making it. They did a really good job. But guess what? They really haven't themselves fixed their internal problems. And what I mean by that is they don't have the ability to recover. And I think that's a real problem. The ability to fail is probably one of the greatest benefits that anyone can have. You can fail and you can restart. You can fail and you can restart. And the Chinese don't have that option with the CCP. That's the problem. There's no failure. If you fail, you're out. If you fail, you may be out feet first. You know what I'm saying? So it's not an option for these guys. If you do a bad investment, a bad scheme over here, okay, it happens. You got to deal with the IRS. You got to deal with the courts. You might get sued. But after a couple of years, you come out. It's like bankruptcy. There's really no such thing as CCP bankruptcy, political bankruptcy over there. In other words, once you're done, you're probably done. And so in that sense, you're going to cover up forever and ever. And that's the problem. I think the thing we have is we have basically people who can't fail. And because they can't fail, they keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper. One of the things, just real quick, is people talk about the reforms needed. Yeah, they know what they need to do. But are they going to do it? Because if they do it, then they have to admit that they were wrong, which they don't want to ever admit that they were wrong. Or is it easier just to double down and kick it to the next guy? Okay. And I think a lot of the problems, in fairness to the CCP before Xi Jinping, it was essentially a 12-year gig. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you got your thing, your Hu Jintao or your Jiang Zemin, and then you get another one. But then, basically after about 8 years, there's somebody else coming in. And, you have to, those guys are competing. They're trying to do a good job. There was a bit of a meritocracy in the CCP. And I think what's happened is in the last 13 years under Xi Jinping, he's managed to crap that out. In other words, there really is no meritocracy anymore. And I'm not praising the communists. It's just, it is what it is, And so that's their problem. The problem is it's bad decisions they can't get away, they can't get out of, because that spells political death. And political death in China is not a retirement sitting on a bunch of boards of directors. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I forget who said, someone famous, there are no second acts in American politics. One of the dumbest and most incorrect things that's ever been said about American politics. They're incredible second acts. I mean, look at Richard Nixon, look at Ronald Reagan. Hey, look at Bob Menendez, second time going up before a federal prosecution. Maybe he'll squeak through this time.
I'm not a fan of Matt. I'm not a fan of Matt Getz. And it's not, by the way, it's not his original line, but it is funny as hell that Menendez had to take gold bars because he was worried about the value of the U.S. dollar.
But as you point out, in China, there may are no second acts, at least none recently. I guess some people may have been rehabilitated after the Cultural Revolution if they managed to survive. But like recent disappearances. Who was it? The equivalent of a Secretary of State over there, head of the rocket forces. One guy was close, very close to Xi Jinping. Was a protege of his, but had a love child over here in America, and that was thought to be a security risk. That's the rumor. No one really knows for certain. Is this Xi sort of his paranoia and just picking off anyone who could?
I think the problem is when things go wrong in that system, everything goes wrong. It's. I mean, the only thing that I'm somewhat secure in saying is that he's always had tremendous friction with certain segments of the CCP, and that being the PLA, because he's always tried to get control of that. And I think he's also had pretty significant pushback from the rural areas. In other words, they're not that scared of him. His ability to go get, if you remember, when he went and got Boji Lai, when he went up there, when he went up and got them, that took him a while to get organized. And I think essentially, and that was just so outrageous. But I think some of these guys out in the countryside, I think he doesn't have the pull that he used to have. Certainly. And when it starts going against you, which, basically the worm turned on him probably just a few months after he got his historic third term, and so I don't see the guy. I don't see the guy as basically being infallible anymore. You know what I'm saying? And the only thing that's holding him up is basically the people that want him to stay there. But he's fourth term. I mean, he'll have to slaughter a lot of people to do it. And I think more and more people are standing up to him. The other thing too is, as that happens, the simple fact is nobody's coming there anymore. FDI is drying up. Foreign direct investment is drying up. Reinvestment is drying up. Money is leaving. People are leaving. I'm fully convinced we're going to see people controls tighten. In other words, really, you already need permission to leave, but it's kind of, it's basically, nothing big. I think that's going to really change. I think that's going to be much, much more difficult to get passes here in the next year or so, because they're worried about people just leaving and taking off. So I don't see a lot of things working for them, but I really think the problem they have is I think they don't have enough people. They're getting old quick. So the old question is, does China become rich before it gets old? Is no, they're going to get old before they get rich. They're way too far away from that. They are not going to be an economic threat to the world. India is going to soon surpass them in terms of a lot of things. And that's pretty sad to say, considering anybody who's ever tried to do business in India. And I say
not a finely tuned machine over there, is it?
Yeah, it's that finely tuned bribe machine. You know what I'm saying? Unlike China, the Indians basically, you bribe in China and sometimes you get something done. In India, it just gets you to the next guy looking for a bribe. And I'm sure people will, if they hear this, will be very insulted by that. But let's be honest, you
better be careful. You go to Canada a lot. They may just whack you up there. The Indians send an agent. Not supposed to talk about it.
But the thing is that, so for me, I just think there's not a lot of hope. I think if you look at India, Modi's trying to make it so he doesn't leave. But the fact is he's delivering the goods. Yeah. But I can assure you, once he stops delivering the goods, he will not be there. They have a strong commitment to democracy in India. And whether certain people are trying to get around it or not, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, it seems like not any, but lots of Indian American businessmen are just wild about Modi and the tack that he took away from Congress there and just ending this endless socialist, bureaucracy.
The closest thing I've seen to that with Modi, I know this is Berlusconi. Berlusconi would go to New York City, or he'd go to San Francisco, or he'd go to Chicago. And it's like the sons of Italy would welcome, and they'd be like, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. They have an Oompa band and all that stuff. That's my take on the Indian community here with Modi. Because the kids, there's ethnic pride. India is basically always been made fun of in their minds. They've got this chip on the shoulder, rightfully so. They've been looked down upon, and they have been looked down upon, especially by China. And they're coming on, and this guy's leading the way. So, yeah, people like him. You know what I'm saying? It's no different than when you're in the Philippines with Duterte. But I'm not kidding you. I've seen Modi people here in rallies, and all I do is think Berlusconi. I'm not kidding you. I remember I was in there, and it's like, you have these guys who can't even speak Italian, and they're going, "A great son of Italy has returned." Berlusconi, and you're looking at them going like you live in like Flushing. You know what I'm saying? It's,
that's
you eat pizza from Domino's. What are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? And but that's the thing with Modi. Modi makes him proud, so that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, well, it's this modernization.
In Canada, it's probably not the best thing in the world, but
yeah, well,
but no,
seems like everyone
China's in
other
real trouble.
Yeah,
and I
think
let
me ask you. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Let's finish with that, then I want to ask you about some
No,
propaganda.
I'm done. Go ahead.
Propaganda. All right. So when I used to work on North Korea, human rights, the State Department, some mornings they'd come up and fire up KCNA, the Korean Central News Agency, just for a laugh. Not that these are funny things. This is a repressive, brutal, murderous regime toward its own people and toward others. But the propaganda was so unbelievably over the top. I mean, Tokyo Rose would have never. This would have made her blush. This would have made Leni Riefenstahl blush. Goebbels, I don't know, maybe he could do it, but just so crazy over the top. And I've noticed this a couple times recently coming out of Hong Kong. Sebastian Lai, son of Jimmy Lai, who you've been the deputy to for decades, currently in prison as a political prisoner in Hong Kong. Anyway, Sebastian appears at a side event at the Human Rights Council. This is not even like a condemnatory resolution by one of the member states against China. This is just a sort of, event, to their credit, sponsored by the UK government, co-sponsored by the US and a bunch of other states. But the statement condemning this preemptively that comes out of the Hong Kong's version of its foreign ministry, its external affairs thing, that just is crazy over the top. And we've seen this a little before with a few other statements relating to Jimmy and the various other political prisoners, people put in jail in Hong Kong for just expressing a point of view, mostly journalists so far, but soon to be businessmen and attorneys too, I'm sure. What's going on? What do you think is prompting this? Because you think the Chinese are at least a little bit suave.
Well, first of all, there's, I think in my mind, there's a few things. The first thing is they can't believe that Jimmy won't bend. I mean, they really, and I've seen this, I work for the guy, I still work for the guy. They can't believe that he won't bend. And it's not a difficult one for him. You know what I'm saying? It's like basically, okay, he told me, of course, everybody knows the stories and I have others, but he goes, I have 74 years of my life. He said, I'm fine. If it's over, it's over. He said, I'll stay here and I'll read my books to the end. And, and he is, that's what he did. And I don't think people really grasp that, and I think the other thing too is Jimmy Lai was forged in fires that I guess Xi Jinping would probably understand him with the Great Wall. And I think what Xi Jinping would go is like what I bust. And the thing is, he probably wouldn't. I give Xi Jinping credit. So is Jimmy going to break? So that's a problem for him. The other problem they have is that, quite frankly, he is a man who is very well known. He's a man with resources, and he's got people supporting him, and he's got things structured that they can't touch. In other words, Jimmy knew he was going to jail. We had conversations about it. All these things were going on. This is not on his part. This is not like something they can walk in the cell and say, stop it. Can't, and they can't stop some of these other very large and well-off and significant people in the world who are Jimmy's friends. They're not going to stop either, because some of these guys are really tough. I mean, Jimmy's friends are, it's a kind of a who's who of, I wouldn't say in the publishing world, but I'd say in the intellectual and the business world. I mean, his tables had some pretty good people around him who, were there. Also, it doesn't take as much as people think it does to challenge them. In other words, they have to spend billions, hundreds of millions of dollars to get their propaganda message out. And all Jimmy Lai has to do is have a few people in the corner going, not true, not true, not true. And so they don't know how to handle that. And hence, that's why we get these ridiculous statements. I think we were looking at one, you and I were looking at one earlier on that was just hilarious, was the one you picked out. They did a release on Jimmy and they were complaining about it. And this is the line. The likes of Jimmy Lai have long been firmly nailed to the pillar of humiliation for betraying the motherland and the people, and must be duly punished. Who writes?
Oh, duly punished, not just punished. Wow.
Duly punished. And who writes that? There's nobody in Hong Kong writing it. There's nobody who went to the Mary Knowles schools or who went to Hong Kong U, or there's nobody in the Hong Kong bureaucracy writing that, just so you know. That's not a Hong Kong person. That's somebody from the mainland who basically reads Mao's little red book. And so that's the problem. The problem is they're communist and they don't know how to work in the outside world, and they're used to people just shutting up. I always say the number one foreign policy goal of the Chinese government, they only have two words: shut up. They don't want to have to defend it. I have been countless times told to shut up. When I was in Hong Kong, countless times, shut up. Now, they tell you in a multitude of ways. They intimidate you. They call you in. They hurt your business, but it's shut up. And the problem that they have is this Hong Kong group, and it's not just Jimmy. In fact, Jimmy's not the major part of it. This Hong Kong group of dissidents, these Hong Kong people overseas, they're resourceful. They have funds available to them. They can hold a fundraiser at a Chinese restaurant with nobody knowing about it, just completely organized on WhatsApp in London. And I'll give you an example. I happen to know they held a fundraiser for one of the groups, something over there, probably about 5 months ago. They held it at a Chinese restaurant owned by a guy who's trusted. All the invitations went out, no names, just numbers, people who showed up. They held a fundraiser. It looked like a normal dinner. That's all that was there. It was just a normal dinner. Somebody got up, stood up, spoke, said, we're passing the, when you come back, if you can put some money in. They raised something like 17,000 pounds. Oh. And there were 150 people there. Of course, it's all cash because nobody wants to do anything. And that's the Chinese problem. The problem is they've got a well-organized machine. Now the Uyghurs are starting to get up and people are starting to just look at them. And it goes back to the fact that they don't have the economy working for them anymore. They'll always have the Quislings like Hank Paulson. You know, the Quislings will always show up, the Hank Paulsons of the world, the Ronnie Chans of the world. All these people who were kissing ass, John Greenwood, all these other people, he's the father of Peg, they'll all show up. But the problem is like, yeah, but they don't have what the Chinese need, which is credibility. And what they need on the outside is just a little bit of money. So it's a lot of money against a little bit of money, but it's 100% credible against zero credible, and the money can't overcome that. Mm-hmm. You know, and so my point is they're panicking. And so this is what's happening. The Hong Kong people look like they've just dropped out of it. They're just like, we're done.
Interesting. Because I was going to ask you if this is sort of impossible to know, but if Beijing was pissed off at Hong Kong for putting them in this situation. But you think they've sort of taken over calling?
No, I talked to somebody. There was the financial secretary was in Hong Kong the other day, and they're so desperate they're just inviting everybody. So a friend of mine went to the thing, and the whole conversation at the table was, "Oh my God, we're getting so much shit from Beijing," because that's the way their system works. People forget their system is a system that feeds off each other. In other words, you rise up by pushing somebody else down. It's like the crab, but they're trying to get on top and push somebody down. So the fact is, right now, you can crap all over Hong Kong all day long if you're in the bureaucracy and the foreign ministry and the MSS, and the secret police. If you're in government, you can crap all over Hong Kong. You're messing it up. You're making it hard on us. It's not your responsibility. So they just had a big changeover about 7 months ago. They changed over the whole crew down there. They brought in a knuckle dragger, a real knuckle dragger, and he's not having the success they want either. But it's really easy for them. The funniest thing is they just don't get it. The easiest thing in the world for them is they've got 1,500 ways to make the world happy. Those are the 1,500 plus people in prison. All that people care about, and I tell the Hong Kong groups this, people don't really get upset about issues and things like this. Yes, press freedom is bad. They worry about it. That's an issue. You get put on the list, and then that's your issue to deal with. What they care about is that essentially they care about people being in prison. Now, the first reaction is it's just wrong and you shouldn't do it. In other words, like, when you look at the indictments that Jimmy has, I'm on a few of them. When you look at our indictments, it's like, what did they do? It's basically all speaking. It's all what we said. It's all what we backed. That we're nonviolent. I mean, one of the things is that, but they're going nuts. They're trying to, attack Jimmy. Him colluding with foreign forces, right? Like the U.S. government has always been, for democracy and to mess up trade. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the Commerce Department and the Treasury Department own that relationship with China, much to the chagrin of the State Department. It's changed a little bit in the DOD coming in. But my point being is, Kristen and Rand, is that they are desperate. And part of that desperation is they don't have the candy they used to feed everybody all the time. Oh, come and invest, come and invest, come and make money. People are pulling out. And if you don't have that, what's the incentive? They did the event in Geneva, I guess it would be today there. 25 nations co-sponsored that thing, including the Japanese, the Australians, the Kiwis, for God's sakes. Lithuania and those guys like to just give them the big F you for the fun of it. But serious trading partners basically showed up risking their wrath. The reason why they're risking their wrath is the wrath is not what it once was. and the rewards are not there. So why not?
Yeah, no, it's a welcome development. Sticking with China, but turning to a pet rock project of mine. You have such great experience in the Philippines from working there for many years and doing business there, even when you're in Hong Kong. We always thought that sort of war with China would start probably over with Taiwan as a flashpoint, but recently I gather the Chinese were trying to erect some inflatable barrier around, was it Scarborough Shoal, or is that the one where there's a basically American-made World War II era LST that was run ashore that has Filipino Marines on it just to help stake their claim. This has been a tit for tat running for a while. The Filipinos think we're mad when we didn't come to their aid instantly earlier. I guess the counter argument to that would be they are a big nation that should have a military and a Coast Guard that have some capabilities and not just rely on the U.S. They did, after all, basically kick us out of our bases in 91, 92. I don't know, any chance that instead of a missile attack on Taiwan, that World War III actually just starts with a couple of Chinese and Filipino Coast Guard boats taking off after each other with 50 cals, something like that?
I think that's probably more likely than Taiwan, because I think Taiwan's a hard target, and they're making it harder every 4 months. The Taiwanese are learning everything the Chinese are trying to do. When you fly 100 planes against Taiwan, they learn a lot. The U.S. learns a lot. The Japanese learn a lot. You know what I'm saying? And the element of surprise, people say, well, it's not there. And then the Taiwanese say, for the first time we're monitoring the ground forces in Fujian. That's bullshit. They've been monitoring those things forever. There's more spies for the Taiwanese. There's 175,000 business people in Fujian province for Taiwan. I'm not kidding you. There's that many of them. Wow. They own all the factories. They run everything there. And so the fact of the matter is they got eyes and ears everywhere, and it doesn't take much to get the local military commander into a whorehouse at night and learn a few secrets. You know what I'm saying? And the Taiwanese, here's the funny thing. They don't even have to communicate anymore. They can learn everything, put everything on a hard drive. Okay. This is how they do it. They learn everything. Then they just fly home. So many of these guys have military training. Okay. Right. And they sit there and they say, well, my factory's here. I'm next to a military base. They fly home. When they come in, they check in with a handler. They check in with a military officer, and they literally, I'm not kidding you, they just go down and meet them, and they're patriotic Taiwanese guys. And they said, yeah, I live here. This military base is here. Nothing's going on. They, the soldiers are always walking around. I see them in the bars. Why? Because he goes home every month. So the amount of information the Taiwanese have is phenomenal, and therefore the Americans have and the Japanese have, because they share it. So there's not many surprises that are going to come out of China. In other words, we'll know if they're really getting ready to go, because they're not just going to be able to go. But Here's the Philippines. Did you see that? I'll send it to you. Anybody who's out there, you got to watch the video of the Filipino fishermen trying to beat the Chinese. This Chinese basically speedboat with this one, this Coast Guard guy on it. And he's trying to get over the line so he can get in to go fishing. It's a banca boat. That's how ridiculous this is. It's what we call a banca. It's like basically the boat, and it's got the one skiff on the side. And he's basically got a small car engine as his motor. He's like, he goes out there.
Yeah, the Thai have that on their rivers. I don't know why they did that.
It's close. It's a very close situation. Not as quite as fast. But he can do 25 knots. Now, of course, the Chinese easily outrun him, but they don't back down. These fishermen go right up there, and it's like, they're right in their damn face. And I'm betting sooner or later, if they keep getting chased off their grounds, they're going to come out there again. And the next time some guy comes up, they're probably going to blow him away. And then you got a shooting war, because the Filipinos are. And it's not Duterte, it's Marcos. And the mood in the Philippines now is there is no chance in hell, just so you know, snowball's chance in hell that the Filipinos are going to back down to the Chinese. All right. They may take a licking. There's no doubt about that. But once that happens, at that point in time, I think it's really going to be interesting. Now, the question I have is, and I think it's legitimate, is Scarborough Shoal something the U.S. wants to go to war over? And the answer is probably no. But it does mean that we're going to have an increased presence there. In other words, and the Chinese are not going to be able to put Coast Guard maritime vessels anywhere they want them. In other words, the U.S. will come out and probably help the Filipinos push them back.
Right.
But Christian, I got to tell you, I've said this for a while. You see some of these things, these small Filipino, 60-foot, 100-foot Coast Guard vessels right up against these 350-foot, basically light cruisers from the Chinese Coast Guard, and they're right there, and these small guys putting it up. The Filipinos, they will fight. I mean, they're pissed, and I hear it from people. And also, the Filipinos are doing something that's brilliant. It's very smart. They are basically using drone photography, and they are bringing foreign journalists out with them. So in other words, the U.S., in fairness to the Biden administration, they're encouraging it. So now every time the Chinese interact, there's a reasonably good chance there is a journalist on board that ship who is immediately given access to upload and broadcast his stuff back. In fact, there's so many people going out there that a friend of mine at Reuters, who is actually one of the better journalists in terms of covering that for years, he said, everybody's doing it. Why should I go out? I can learn more here. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, they really are. The Chinese, they put that barrier down in the water. Basically, it looks like a thing in your local swimming pool. To be honest with you, it's like that's the thing.
I've noticed them around Navy ships in San Diego, but yeah, this one looked dinkier. This one looked like
it's dinkier.
You could cut through it with a whaler.
It's basically like I told somebody that's what Kevin Bacon had, like an Animal House, like remain calm, don't cross over here. That's the line they put down. So, and that's what they had, and the Filipinos picked it up. The Filipinos like, screw you, we're picking it up.
Yeah,
and the Chinese didn't know what to do, but the Chinese they're not going to be able to back down because their system won't allow it, and that's the whole point. In the Philippines, they can make mistakes, they can recover, and you can do things. So, for example, let me give you an example. Under Obama, we were humiliated by the Iranians taking a small Navy craft.
Yes.
Because, we were not allowed to respond fire. Well, in fairness, when Trump came in, you never saw the Iranians try that again. You know what I'm saying? So, and now I think they might want to try it again. You never know with this crew in, but I don't think they would. So in other words, we saw the mistake and we fixed it for the most part, I guess. But, we seem to forget that the Chinese don't have that operation. The Chinese, frankly, in the South China Sea, they control it. There's really no chance of the U.S. doing anything down there. I don't see the rationale anymore other than oil, which is a big reason, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Other than oil to basically have those maritime boats down there. I think it's turned into almost a gangster operation now. In other words, it's the maritime. They're involved in all types of smuggling down there. By the way, all types of smuggling. These maritime craft. Some of them work for the oil companies. Some of them do other stuff. Some of them, whatever they do. Not many of them are fishing that much, but they're down there and they're being paid, and people don't know what to do with them now. And I think that's a real problem. But honestly, if they wanted to get oil out of the water, you can't. There's no chance. I talked to a Malaysian guy one time who's a Malaysian oil company. And he told me, he said, there's no chance of ever getting any oil down there if it turns into a battlefield. He said, you can't set up oil rigs if some guy can, because all the guy has to do is drive by with a fisherman in a boat, light up two RPGs and you're done.
Right.
And so it's, you need peace. And actually, the Chinese are sophisticated enough in their markets, in fairness to them. They know all you got to do is just get the oil flowing. They'll control it. You know what I'm saying? Who cares if you're partner? Who cares if the Malaysians or the Vietnamese are your 30% partners on it? Nobody cares. As long as that oil flows into the marketplace, that's all they need. In other words, if they can get another 10 million barrels of oil a day or whatever it is out of there, so what?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that Chinese companies have it. It just matters that it goes onto the market, and that drives down oil prices.
Right. Actually, maybe we just finish on this in the last couple minutes. Speaking of oil, which is up against $95 a barrel almost. Energy prices going up until the U.S. enters recession probably. But Indonesia announcing an actual carbon credit trading scheme. This strikes me as odd for a country that is still per capita kind of poor, that probably doesn't want high energy prices. I've always assumed that most of Southeast Asia has been giving lip service to the climate change religion, and hoping that it results in some transfer of resources from richer countries to them. So they're going along for it, but wouldn't actually take steps that would raise the cost of their own energy. Do you think this thing in Indonesia is real? Are they actually going to do this idea that, for example, California would like to do? Or is this window dressing, do you think?
I think it's corruption. I think somebody's figured out how to take some money out of the jackasses from the World Economic Forum or from Greenpeace, or from not Greenpeace, but from some German NGO or some U.S. program that John Kerry has set up. And they figured out how to milk the shit out of this thing, and nobody cares because no one's going to abide by it.
Right. So the coal plants can keep operating, and it's like, oh yeah, we'll get around to buying the credits tomorrow. Okay.
Indonesian coal is some of the most valuable coal in Asia because it burns so well. It's like apparently really high grade. Are really good coal. That's what I was told one time. They have oil, they have coal, they have timber. Are you kidding me? No, not a chance in hell that place is going to. But if some idiot wants to sign something, you know what I'm saying? I mean, really, it's basically Sierra Madre, like, here's your badges. They're going, badges? We don't need no stinking badges. I mean, that's what it is. Here's your global climate change award. Okay, thanks. I mean, it's kind of like it's like United Airlines. Whenever you get on United Airlines, would you like to donate money towards global climate change?
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, if anybody does it, I would love to see how many people actually say. I am guaranteeing you, of the hundreds of thousands of people that fly, maybe a day, I don't know United, but hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people that fly United Airlines every week, I can 1,000% guarantee you it's no more than 0.1% of the people that say yes. But yeah, of course, that's it. It's kind of like when you go. I mean, that's basically that's actually, I like the analogy. That's like basically what the climate change people have turned into. Would you like to donate 25 cents? Would you like to round up your purchase of gas for another 25 cents? That's all it is. That's what it's turned into. And the Indonesians, all right, so if we sign up for this, we get to go to Geneva 3 times a year, and we get to fly to Brisbane, and we get free hotel rooms. Okay, we'll do it. We're there.
Yeah, well, the COP this year is in Dubai, so that's a nice
place
to go.
Well, that's free hotels. Look, man, I'm telling you, I spent enough time in the Philippines to know that they milk the Filipinos, the Indonesians, the Thais, the Americans. You know what I'm saying? All these people who work in NGOs, they can sniff out a freebie like no tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like, they're like the old ladies who can find the lobster at the buffet. You know what I'm saying? I mean, anything that's free, these guys can find. It's unbelievable. I mean, people, if you don't know that, if you don't believe that, they are unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. It's like, I still remember, last story, I'll let you go. I still remember being in Hong Kong. And the guy, I think, congressional delegation there of congressional delegation. And the delegation was there. And it wasn't a delegation, it was staffers, all staffers. And they were staying at the Mandarin Oriental. So they had at the Mandarin, they had on their things legally, they had like $80 a day or something like that of per diem that they had to use. So at the end, the guy from the group goes, do we have a total of how much per diem that we've spent so far at the hotels? So this guy gets it. And so I'm standing there because a friend of mine, she's one of the staffers. So I'm sitting there, and this is like 12 years ago. I'm standing there, And I'm standing there with a couple. This, we still had decent relationships with the Hong Kong government. We could at least talk to him. We're standing there. This guy from, by the way, he was a Republican. This guy from Republican office. He gets out and he goes, "Here's how much you have left." So everybody had like they'd been there for like 4 days. Some people just didn't use it. Oh, you have $200 left. You have $300. So he proceeded with these other 3 people to go into the gift shop and buy gifts using their per diem. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen of a U.S. government official. It was pathetic. I was embarrassed. The woman I was with was embarrassed. The Hong Kong officials were just looking at them like, "Oh my God, is this what you people do?" It was like, I'm telling you, it was like the country cousins came to Beverly Hills, you know what I'm saying, and wanted everything. And that's my opinion of this Indonesian program, and I'll let you go. It's a freebie. I know about it. I saw it. All I think to myself is, hey, we get to go to exciting free places, especially Paris, and somebody else pays for it.
Yes. Well, good. I'm glad to know that they're not just raising their energy costs, because that's not something Indonesia needs.
Honestly, football's chance in hell.
Great. All right. Well, that's it for this edition of Simon White. We'll be back soon with another edition. Thanks.